which is good timing actually. But
I've got something on the back of my door, and it just says on air.
does it really?
Well, it says my man cave, but I've just literally turned it round, got a marker pen, and put on air. It's just so my son doesn't barge in, or my wife barges in and says, "Oh, your tea's done," or one of them.
Yeah. Who are you talking to? Who's that stranger on the internet?
That's it, mate. That's it.
Yeah.
So today on a good old natter with, I have Mr. Chris Wilkins. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing fine.
That's
Thank
really,
you.
really good. That's good. It's I've actually wanted to get you on here for a while, believe it or not. You're definitely on the list, and I think Wayne, when he rang me the other day, sort of give me the kick to send you another message. Because every time I try to get to speak to you, you're always super busy. You're either at RCM talking to people or
Yeah.
Crash. You look pretty stressed at Crash, to be honest. Enjoyment stress.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
get it. So one of the first questions I always tend to ask is, what was your first introduction to games or computers, arcades, or console? What was your first?
I'm from a place called Larne in West Wales, famous for Dylan Thomas, Under Milkwood, a famous Welsh export that you either have heard of or you haven't. So, live by the estuary. There's a castle there, and the boathouse where he did all his work. So it sounds very idyllic when you're later on in life, but when you're a kid, there wasn't much to do. So down the sort of coastal line is a place called Pendine, which again is famous, but it's famous for the land speed records, Donald Campbell and Bluebird, and all those cars that were trying to get world speed records in the early 1920s, 1930s. So down there was a much more touristy kind of place for people to visit, like there's caravan parks and such. And so only a tiny little place, but there was 2 arcades there in the 80s or late 70s, early 80s. And we would go to them and we would cycle down to them. You'd have your well, I wasn't blessed with a chopper or wherever. It was like whatever the cheaper clone was at the time.
Yeah.
And you would cycle the 4 miles down to Pendine. And we were skint, mate. We had no money and we had no water or no food, but we would just say, what are we going to do now? And we would cycle down there and we'd watch all the guys and girls and the kids and wherever, the families would come into Pendine, and we'd watch them all play the latest arcade machines. Because what we noticed was every week we went down there, or every couple of weeks, there was always new machines.
Yeah.
I remember seeing, one of the first memories I had was seeing, is it Sprint? The it wasn't the later ones, Championship Sprint or Super Sprint. It was a big 4-player machine, but it was black and white, where the cars were.
Yes, they had.
The wheels used to go
Yeah.
and then they turned slowly, and there was oil slicks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So my earliest memory of the arcades is going and playing games like that, and seeing shooters, where you knock cans down with like I don't know, some kind of light sensor thing going on. So we used to go down and see these arcade machines, but again, never had the confidence, never had the money, tried to play the games, but there was a fascination watching others play, who had the money and would get onto the later levels. Yeah. I remember seeing golf, for example. That seems a memory. The first time I saw golf and the sound and the speech.
Speaking to you, yeah.
So we used to do that down in the arcades, and then when we used to go home, the nearest thing that we had to that back at home at the time was like a grandstand console, where it was basically you could play squash or football or and literally it was basically a pixel ball and bats that go up and down the side of the screen, and that was the entertainment we had back at home, which was a big far reach, from what we saw in the arcades in the late 70s, early 80s. There was another place we used to go to where we learnt. There was a cocktail Space Invaders cab, and we learnt if you switch the thing on and off quickly, lots and lots of times, you'd get yourself into a little bit of a tiz and give you 100 credits. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Used to have my mate looking out of the door to make sure no one was coming, and they were there just fiddling the
Yeah,
on-off
yeah,
switch. Eventually, it would make this kind of squealing noise, and then you had 100 credits,
yeah.
and so those are the kind of memories I used to have way back, before. So you got your more, much more advanced sort of computers at home. So we're talking late 70s. When was the cocktail cabinets of Space Invaders? Was it 79, 80, something like that?
It was definitely the 70s because I remember on a Sunday going to the pub with my dad and sat down, drink. My dad would have his pint and I'd be there with me Coke or Vimto or whatever,
Yeah.
and you'd have Pac-Man or Space Invaders, Galaxians, whatever was there, and it was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, great fun.
I must have been about 10 at the time. My dad used to play snooker, and he quite professionally at the time, a bit like Wayne. And he would mingle with Terry Griffiths and Doug Mountjoy and
Wow.
Cliff Wills, all these big snooker players. And he was trying to teach me how to play snooker when I was a young lad. And there's a snooker hall in a place called Clymilo, which is near Pendine. And you have a bar in one area, and it was full of cocktail cabinets, yeah.
Hmm.
And then there was 2 snooker rooms that my dad wanted me to learn how to play snooker. I didn't want to be in there. I wanted to be in the bar looking at these funky new, I remember seeing Gallagher there for the first time, yeah, and Gyrus, on these flat cocktail caps,
Yeah, stunning.
and that was my interest. I was fascinated by the tech, I guess, in the arcades, and there was nothing like that at the time that you could bring into your bedroom or your sitting room. It was before that time,
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, we used to get to a place called Talaka near Prestatyn, and then we'd get a coach to Rhyl, but that was where we used to have our holidays when I was a kid, and that was most of where I got to see a lot of the arcade machines then. But
yeah.
there's not far from where I live. There's a place called Clent Hills. When I was a kid, I remember there being an arcade there and seeing that black and white sprint machine you're on about.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know what happened to that because there's houses there now, unfortunately, like most things, most arcades and stuff. So
Also, it's a restaurant now, the bigger one, and then the smaller one is like a laundrette.
yeah, yeah, it's a
So
shame.
yeah.
Yeah, they're coming back though. They're coming back. So apart from the arcades, then, what was your um first love of computers then?
So as I said, it's a small little town. There was nothing to do. You had a mixture of people there. The not so well off and the rich kids. And I remember going to Cub Scouts because, as I said, there was nothing to do. So you would go to the community centre, you would join Cub Scouts, you would join the choir because there was a church there. Because it was, you did things what everybody else did. So I remember going to the community centre one week, and one of the richer kids brought in a ZX81.
Mm.
And I remember him having it there, and everybody was huddled around this table trying to see what this new magic thing was. And for some reason, I wasn't that enamored or interested at that time, so I just remember it being there. And then I guess later on, not much later on, I went to the grammar school, and you're in a grammar school, and you're trying to get on with the teachers. And I remember I was only 11 or 12, and one of the guys in my class, in the geography class, we just been on this kind of thing where we went out and started measuring, I don't know, sedimentary rock and all that kind of stuff you do in geography when you're 12,
Yeah.
or cutting layers and saying that's that period, that's that period. And the geography teacher got all these stats. And unbeknown to me, he had agreed with this colleague of mine, this friend of mine, to write a program on a ZX Spectrum for the data to be input, and then it would draw all these graphs.
Okay.
And I was like absolutely gobsmacked, mate,
Yeah.
because how could he be teacher's pet and not me? And I said, yeah. And what is this magic, where he's putting the stuff into something which is doing something on a screen? You know what I mean? Because a TV at the time was just a grandstand, as I said, but
Yeah.
this is him telling the screen to do something, and he was doing it, So that was my first introduction. I'm thinking I had to have that, and he was a friend of mine, and I said to him, he told me all about what his Spectrum was, and Christmas was coming up, and don't get the 16K one, get the 48K one, and
Oh,
all that
okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were 129 pounds 99 at the time, which it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Go to my parents and say,
Hmm.
they said, well, why can't we? Even 99 pounds for 16K one was a stretch. And I was asking him to pay another £30. Well, it has to be this one. And then he said to get Manic Miner, and he said to get Lunar Jet Man, and I didn't know what the hell these were. As the games, yeah, you won't be disappointed. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how do you know? How do you know this? So I just remember being on this, the months before, between, I don't know, November and Christmas. It
Yeah.
wasn't that long, but it felt like 2 years,
It
didn't it?
did. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was screaming, craving to play with this gadget I knew was in the house somewhere. I remember persuading my mum, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens on Christmas Day if I switch it on? I need to test this. And, I've been told by my friend I have to test this, and saying any old crap really to have 5 minutes with this computer. And that's what we did. We loaded up the Horizons tape and just loading up all those demos until the point, my mother said, well, how much more proving do you need? And it wrapped it all up, and it went back under the bed or wherever the hell it went until Christmas morning.
Mm.
That was my first computer, my first big love.
Yeah.
I picked the Spectrum, and that was my, you pick one, didn't you? And that's the
Yeah.
bed I lay in, the ZX Spectrum.
Yeah. We had we had a BBC rolled on a trolley at primary school. That was my
Yeah,
first introduction
yeah,
to computers, and I, I wasn't aware of the ZX81 back then. Um, I remember one Christmas my dad had bought. I don't think he bought it for me as a Christmas present. He bought it for as a family entertainment system. It was an Acetronic 1000. So it was just before the Atari 2600, if I remember. So it was a 1970s jobby cartridge machine, big grey cartridges.
yeah.
And then we had the Atari, and then yeah, my first computer was the rubber keyed Spectrum. But similar to you, my my parents, they could afford to get me what they could, and that was it. There was no. I was happy with what I got, really. My dad my dad worked, but my mum didn't. So yes, it was all on him. And I also remember Christmas Day. I was one of the unfortunate ones where my computer didn't work on Christmas Day. It wasn't tested, nothing.
You've asked your mum to test it.
I know. But on Boxing Day, I remember walking up to Woolworths with my dad, and it was the time when it was the transition between the rubber keyed and the Spectrum Plus was happening. So basically, the shopkeeper said to me, Dad, look, we haven't got no more rubber keyed ones, but we'll do this one for exactly the same price of what you paid.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, yeah, okay, let's have that one. And
We got great. Yeah.
yeah, it was great. So that was my first, really. Yeah, brilliant.
See, I had the Spectrum that Christmas.
Hmm.
Uh, and then you have a craving to get games, and um, I think the first game I had enough money to. Oh, I had some money in my pocket, pocket money or whatever, and I went into Smiths, because it was the Smiths in Carmarthen, which is now a joint post office. And it doesn't look the same, but that's where I got my computer from,
Yeah.
and that's where I would get the games. And I had no idea what a good game was. You don't.
No.
No internet. magazines. I knew nothing about anything at the time. No, I didn't used to get magazines. I take out the Beano every week, as a kid.
Do you remember Looking? That was a
Yeah,
magazine. I remember having that,
yeah.
Looking. Yeah.
So I went into Smith's and you're looking at all these cases and all the very attractive game art, and you just take a punt, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
I remember getting Richard Shepard's software, Terror of the Deep.
Oh well,
Like,
okay.
it had a big grey ale, a scuba diver with a big
Yeah,
harpoon. I'm thinking, shit, this looks good.
yeah.
I took it home and it was, loading and played it, and it was complete and utter tripe. Yeah, written in BASIC,
Yeah,
and you spend £5.50, of your, and you feel robbed,
yeah. They always show you the best
Yeah,
version on the back as well, don't they? The
yeah.
screenshot of the best version.
So I remember taking it back the week because we used to go to Carmarthen shopping every week because I was living in Larne, this small place, and the main town, Carmarthen, was about 13 miles away. Where there was a Tesco's and Smiths and all that stuff. I remember taking it back to the guy saying it doesn't work, and then they had this Spectrum on display, and he said, let's try it, and no, So you press load, and it started to load, and there it was, loading screen and loading up. And thankfully, there was a queue forming, and the guy had to go back to the counter. So what I did, I went up and just tapped the pause button on the cassette player, enough for it to stop and start.
Yeah.
And then up comes our tape loading error. And I said, see? Yeah.
Oh, what you do when you're kids?
And then I stopped that game then for Hall of Things, if you remember that game.
Oh,
Again, I
vaguely.
had no idea, by Simon Brattle. I had no idea what a good game was, and that was a better game
Hmm.
than Terrors of the Deep, yeah, or Devils of the Deep.
Yeah,
That was my experience of being conned, at the age of 13 or so, of
yeah.
your earned pocket money.
That's it. I mean, we had a couple of video shops, um, in the town where I was living at the time, where you could hire Atari cartridges, but obviously when the computer transition came in, you could hire Spectrum, Amstrad, and Commodore 64 games.
Yeah,
So, um, obviously then the tape to tape
yeah,
rasters,
ooh,
raster machines came out,
yeah.
and then you had some games to take to school with you. So,
I know. Get C90 tapes full of games, and you would be
that's it.
copies of
That's
copies,
it.
wouldn't it?
And that's how you got your games. It was,
Yeah,
there was no way that I could afford, or my parents could afford, to get me games every week. So that's unfortunately that's what you did. You all turned into little pirates, didn't you? So
so I used to get. I was so in love with the Spectrum, the whole thing about it, and then the fact that you could put additional bits onto it, like
mm,
having a Kempston mouse and borrowing things off other people who would have these things,
yeah,
Curr's speech synthesizer, the Spectrum, and then the year after Christmas, I got the Z expansion kit, with the micro drive and the interface one, and
oh wow, okay,
so I had one of those from the same Smiths. And then Christmas morning came, and I was so excited, and this new tech again, but it didn't work. I couldn't get it to work, and I must have been 14 then.
mm,
And then you read in magazines a little bit. The friend in the school, the same friend, said, if I asked him, how do you know about getting good games? Or you need to read Crash, and that was my first introduction to Crash. So
right,
buy in reviews, and then he would do previews of hardware. And it said something about cleaning the edge connector if something doesn't work.
mm.
There's me with a knife just doing,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, this will work on this.
yeah, plugged it in, and nothing, all the hieroglyphics, and that was the end of the Spectrum,
Yeah,
and that was the year later. And I remember my auntie's partner at the time, my dad's sister, came down, and he took it away, took it to Llanelli, got it repaired, and I got it back a couple of weeks later, and I adored that man for years because he'd fixed my spec.
yeah, yeah.
And I went back to Smiths, and they got a new expansion pack, and that one worked.
All right. No, I
So,
never owned the micro drive system. I think it took ages until I had an interface. So all the games I played, it was always keyboard. And even to this day, I still prefer playing specky games on a keyboard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think I had so many interfaces that you had to angle right just to get them to work with your joystick.
So my first experience of loss was not a family member, though it was my
It was
Spectrum.
your
And it was
specky, yeah,
a feeling of losing something you loved, That was my
yeah,
first loss.
yeah. So did you? What did you move up to after that, or did you not? Did you carry on
Oh, yeah.
with spec games?
Well, I added an Alphacom 32 printer. I added other bits and pieces. I had this kind of, I always thought of it like a command center, my Spectrum, my microdrive, and all this. I bought your Sinclair magazine, and I bought magazines to type in listings, and
Yeah, skiving days off school. I remember doing that just so I could
look,
type something
then
in.
go type in a listing for a game or whatever, where Santa goes across the screen and you got to drop presents
Yeah,
in the game, and then you change it to something else, and it's I don't know, you start changing the code and learning how to code really. And then your Sinclair did something called Mega Basic, which you either know or you don't, by a guy called Mike Lehman. And it was basically a bit of software which enhanced the basic. It allowed you to do Windows and all that kind of stuff.
okay.
So I used that application to write my O-level project in computer studies, and I wrote a financial system
Wow.
and all that. Well, it sounds much more
Yeah,
a
yeah,
financial
yeah.
system.
But I was going to say back then.
Yeah, 40K, yeah.
So it was a
But,
calculator then.
I think the first 20K, yeah, the first 20K was the application, and then you had about, I don't know, 18, 19K to manage your accounts, put transactions in, balance sheets, all that stuff. And that's what I did with that. And then as soon as I sold all that to my neighbor when the time came, because I wanted to buy a +2. And I bought the first generation, not not the B, the first one,
The
which was like
grey,
a grey
the light
case.
grey one. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was my next one, computer. And then I fell in love with the AY sound chip. Um, Robocop, I think, was one of the first tunes, and the Thundercats and Glider Rider, all those tunes.
Yeah.
I was
So,
introduced to. I had that. I didn't have that. I had the original Spectrum for a few years. I had the +2 maybe for a year, and then I moved up to the Atari ST.
mm,
And I remember getting a +3 because they were in Comets for sale really cheaply.
okay.
When they've been on the shelf for such a long time, the boxes were all falling apart.
Yeah.
And then is the sale part of Comets, where everything, what is this? And I paid, I don't
Yeah.
know, 30 or
Bargain
something.
bin.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And I went to an Atari ST, and again I was back to square one. Then I'd sold everything. I'd had this £500 computer, or whatever much it was,
Mm.
and you switch it on and it doesn't do anything. It just has gem, the green and the bloody B and all that stuff. Didn't do anything. So I had no software. Games were like, what, 20, 30 quid for those back then? Like, it jumped up, or whatever
Yeah.
the prices. And then I had to wait to Christmas again for my first couple of games, and that was Barbarian by
Palace.
Alice, yeah, with a head being chopped off.
Yeah.
And I had Star Wars, the original Star Wars game by Dolmark.
Oh
I
yeah.
was, I was blown away. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was. And then I bought GFA Basic,
Okay.
started a code, and then I went, after about 6 months. I went into Carmarthen, and there was a computer shop there, and I walked in, and they had an Amiga 500 playing the Axel F Beverly Hills music,
Yeah.
and it was without the outs into an amplifier, and they had a speaker on both sides of the room, and it was going din 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 din, din, and it was bouncing, yeah. And I was like, oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
And then through the Atari ST, sorry Atari lovers, and I moved into, having not had a Commodore 64, but having knowledge of it, into the Commodore fold with a second-hand Amiga 500,
Mm.
which then became an Amiga 1200 when they came out.
Yeah.
And I used that for years, the Amiga 1200.
Mm.
That was my second love, really, the Amiga computers and the music and the
Yeah.
public domain.
Yeah.
And then I taught myself how to program in Amos.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um,
Yes, it's
and
similar line to me, really, with like your progression.
yeah,
But I went from the plus to the toast rack, and then I remember not wanting anything to do with Amstrad. You know what you like when you're a kid. I was like, no, I'm not having a +2 or a +3. It's been made by Amstrad. I'm not having that. Which is just ridiculous when you think about it now. And I think then I moved to the Atari ST FM, and then yeah, I think a mate of mine at high school, he just had an Amiga computer, and we went back to his house on a lunchtime, and he showed me Pac-Mania, and it was full screen, obviously with the music, and he put Menace on by Psygnosis, and I was absolutely blown. And a similar thing, I was like, oh, that poor old Atari ST, I don't want it anymore. I want the Amiga, but it was so expensive, and I think I did the same. I think I managed to sell my ST to somebody for some money, and bought a second-hand Amiga. Yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah, see, I loved the ST at the time. I remember starting. I started off at a polytechnic, which then became a university, and doing a course, a computer studies course. And I remember having the Atari ST. And then when you're in uni or poly, then you got access to more people who have got the same kind of systems, and you get discs. And I remember coming across a disc that had a SID emulator on it. And so on the Atari ST, it was playing all of the major Rob Hubbard, Martin Galway SID tunes.
Oh, wow.
On an Atari ST on an AY chip. So
Yeah.
it sounds just like the tunes on the 64.
Yeah.
I was blown away by that. And then I just loved all the music then on the Amiga, like Leander music and all the public domain demos, and used to get them on Amiga format. I used to get tune of the month and introductions to Alistair Brimble and all those people who weirdly, donkeys years later you get to know, which is really kind of surreal. But all these people used to listen to their music, and some of these tunes were so good. You would just put I used to have a hard day doing lectures. I used to go home and used to put in the disc and then just load up whatever game just to listen to the tune.
Yeah, used to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, a little Pioneer amplifier with some speakers, and pumping the Amiga. The mod music was brilliant. Still think it's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. Big fan of that.
And then you bump into the authors of this music donkeys years later, and just say, thanks, mate. Thanks for doing that tune, and that tune. That got me through some, I wouldn't say dark times, but high pressure, doing your degree and everything times.
Yeah.
And you still listen to them now, and it's still on YouTube or whatever, and it just brings all the nostalgia back, isn't it? And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Really,
it is. Absolutely. So moving forward a little bit now, how did Fusion start? How did you start with Fusion? Yeah.
Right. So when I was in uni, which was a poly, it became a uni the year after I left. It was the Polytechnic of Wales. And then it became the University of Glamorgan, and now it's the University of South Wales. It's the same thing, same place.
Okay.
So when I was in uni, and I always remember this, I never knew what Games Master was. And it was during those 4 years when I was doing my degree, it was a big thing on the telly. But because I'd taken my Amiga and to Poly, and all I was using the Amiga for there was big bouts of sensible soccer as an escape.
Yeah.
And then I remember having a DOS emulator. You put a disk in to load version 1 of DOS, which is the operating system for a PC, and then you would put Turbo Pascal in and load Turbo Pascal 4 up or 3 or whatever it was, and then I would be doing my assignments on the Amiga, writing code in Pascal, which was being emulated by a DOS emulator on an Amiga.
It's brilliant. Was that your 1200?
That was 1200 doing that. I can't remember when I got rid of the 500. I had that for a little while. and then I had something called Ventura, which was like a desktop publishing application. And God knows where you get it from. You know, you're exchanging discs in dark
Yeah,
corners of the uni. You know,
absolutely.
I was doing all my assignments on there. So those 4 years when I was in uni, I wasn't really into gaming, into anything really. It was more about programming and getting the course done. So when I finished uni, I remember doing my first job, and I was a programmer. And then again, it was Sensible Soccer and public domain from a friend. I had loads of public domain on the Amiga, and just one of those Philips monitors that slopes the CMB3 through wherever the number is. And then again, it was all about work and getting into my career really. And then I remember being in Stratford upon Avon on my third job, I think it was, after graduating, walking into Smith's
Hmm.
and then bumping into Retro Gamer magazine.
Okay.
So that would be in 2003, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the first issue of Retro Gamer, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how long has that been there for? Because I've never seen that before.
Hmm.
You know, because all the cover was all scuffed and made to look old.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd been there for, I didn't realize it was a new magazine. I started buying that, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And that's how I got back into retro. Yeah.
Yeah. Brought all the memories back. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, I remember reading it from, like you did in the old days with Crash. You would open up the first page, you would read every word until I used to read every word of that magazine.
Yeah.
Who is this Martin Carroll? This editor and and it brought back that kind of excitement in my world, at least when I had Crash coming through. Where you didn't know what you were going to read. The top 10 games of this, and there was lots of filler, but some really great articles, and it was all, oh my God, I'm so into this.
Well, it
And
was
that
our
was,
internet, wasn't it? At the end of the day, that was our internet.
yeah,
Yeah.
because before that you'd be trying to download like you know a Legend of Zelda ROM for 40 meg on a modem connection, because you wanted to play that game on an emulator, but it would take 6 hours to download it. But now you could read about all this, look at all the people's opinions, and and you'd have a disc eventually with emulators on and all that kind of stuff. So there was that, and then I remember reading about something called Retrovision, an event called Retrovision,
Okay.
which is a guy called Marky was running these, and it was these gatherings basically, um, from the Lamasoft forum mainly, which was run by Jeff Minter and
Yeah.
Giles, and it was. I went to Frome. I went into this place, and it was full of machines, and I met the Sid 80s band, Mark Knight, friends, people who are friends now. Um, and it was this thing about getting back into all of this scene, which I hadn't realized was there.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was
I'm
the same.
thinking,
Mm.
I want to do this. I want to do an event.
Yeah.
Um, so that year, we did the Retro Ball event in Kenilworth, 2005. I think it was December.
Oh, okay.
And I managed to get. This is where I bumped in. I got to know. No, earlier in the year, I went to CGE in London. I don't know if you even remember that, in Croydon. And
CG.
that's where there was a CGE UK and a CGE America, and it was these big retro gaming event with stalls, lots of stalls, and that's why I saw Darren from Retro Gamer for the first time. But he was working for GamesDM. That's why I saw Martin Carroll for the first time on the Retro Gamer lot. Yeah, and so I did the first year there. I went down with a friend, and then after all of that, I just said I wanted to do my own event. So we did this event in Kenilworth, and unbeknown to me, that Philip Oliver lives in my town, and we did this radio advert trying to get people to come to the event, and his missus heard it, so he got in touch, and Philip's been a friend ever since, and Andrew. Archer, who I'd met at CG, I persuaded him to come. Met David Whittaker, Rob Hubbard, some guys from Bullfrog, the late Richard Joseph. All these megastars all came to do this event in Kenilworth, which is only down the way from me, the cricket ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had arcade machines, we had pinball machines, pachinkos, and there's about 200 people came, and then we give all the money to charity. We called it the Retro Ball because the charity was for testicular cancer. We thought it was a clever name, but I think a lot of people thought they had to dress up in black and white suits, and some kind of dance or something. But and then the people who came, I wanted to give them a magazine, and that's where the Retrofusion magazine came. So not the Fusion magazine, but Retrofusion, and we did an issue 0, all done in publisher, no bleed or anything, so you can see the white borders around the pages because we didn't know what we were doing. And thereafter, we did an issue 1 and an issue 2 that went into GameStation. We managed to get a deal with GameStation, and at the time, Retro Gamer was in trouble a little bit. Light publishing were going down, and then eventually Imagine bought Retro Gamer. And at that time, you know, younger and all these grand ideas about, yeah, we could do a magazine. This could be the leading retro magazine, blah, blah, blah. And then I had 2 very young kids, and my son was born, and then the whole world went pop.
As he does, yeah.
I couldn't juggle. You know, it's like me sitting here talking to you for an hour now, and then my wife next door with a baby and 2 very young kids, and it wasn't fair. So something had to give.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I did. So we done this magazine, and we've still got copies of it. Look it up. It's still, you know, it goes on eBay for 20 quid an issue if you can find it.
Oh wow! Okay, the original.
Yeah, well, we printed loads, but you don't see them very often. We're talking, this is 18 years ago now. So we did 3 issues, and I've seen them going for about 20 quid plus on eBay.
Wow. Okay.
It was called Retrofusion. It just seemed like a good name.
Yeah.
We did, as I said, we did issue 0, and then we did 2 magazines at that point. Then I did an event in 2008 because there's this kind of craving to do this event thing, and that seems to be a theme all the way through my life at the moment. And we did a small event in Leamington and persuaded Sandy White to come, the guy who developed Antattack, you know, and at the time we had Archer was there, we had Philip and Andrew were there, Oliver, and we had Sandy there, and the Bullfrog guys came again because they came to the one in 2005. And we had about, I don't know, 110 people. It was really cramped, yeah. It was really a small venue. You know, I didn't want to do a big thing, it was a small venue. And I remember Rock Band coming out at the time. It was that time when Rock Band came out.
Right.
Yeah, and we got one set up with a projector. And here we had Sandy White saying he was just going to visit, yeah, because he was a bit uncertain about what he was walking into. Because you would be, wouldn't you? You know,
yeah.
Come to our event, you know, we're big fans, yeah. And then and I swear, mate, it was him and the guys playing Rock Band all the way through till gone midnight. And we had to tell Sandy in the end and the others, maybe we've got to stop now, you know.
Turn the electric off on him.
And I've been friends with Sandy ever since, you know, and that was 2008. And then you go back into the wilderness again a little bit then. I think I did another issue of Retrofusion on Indiegogo, and then I think during that time I got friendly with Matthew Uffendall. I think when I did Retrofusion, I was looking through Retro Gamer at the time to see who was advertising, as you do, and Thalamus Publishing, where Roger and Ollie and Matthew Uffendall were working, had an advert with a phone number, so I just rang it, you know. And Matthew Uffendall answered, and he's the guy that used to do all the photography and various things on Crash back in Newsfield. So we got really, really friendly, and every time I was bored in work, I would ring him up at lunchtime and we would have a chat about the old days. And then one day I rang up and Roger answered, and like, well, the real Roger. And that's how I got to know Mr. Keane back in 2006 or 7 or thereabouts. We used to have conversations on the phone then. And then ultimately I met Rog 2010, I think, at Replay in Blackpool, the Play Blackpool thing.
Okay.
And then I realised Rog was married or partnered with Ollie. And then there was that running joke, you know, when you get one free, you know. I didn't know Roger's partner. And that was 2010 thereabouts. So yeah, so I'm rambling a little bit, but that's the kind of history how I got to know Rog, and then the Ocean book, US Skull book, and then we worked on an Amiga book and various other things that we continue to do, you know, all the way up to, I think it was the ZZap annual 2021 he formatted, you know, until he became a little bit too poorly to do anything else.
Mm.
And during that time, we bought Crash back as an annual. We bought Zap back as an annual. And then that's where we got to in about 2017, 2018, where Crash sort of came back, and it was sort of the whole thing came about. The Spectrum Next had been launched and was becoming a thing, and we'd just done the fantasy art of Oliver Frey, and my wife and I and Steve Day and a few others went down to Ludlow, down to the bookshop to do like a launch of the book. And afterwards in the pub, my wife said, just out of the blue, why don't you, I said to Rog, so what next? Because we always said, well, what next? What do we do now? And my wife said, why don't you do an annual? Yeah. And she just came out with this. And I'm like, to Rog, is there any reason why we can't do a Crash annual? And that's how that idea sort of spawned off, So with Rog and Ollie, there's this natural creativity, wherever we would talk and we come up with ideas. The Ocean one, the initial idea for doing a book was not Ocean, it was one on the Bitmap brothers. I'd seen the book by Rom. I don't know if you know Rom, who did the Sensible Software book, and it was an inspiration. And I thought, okay, I Mike Montgomery, I knew him through John Hare, through coming to the events, and the Rom guys had already signed up Mike to do a Bitmap brothers book. So because I knew Simon Butler a little bit at the time, and I bumped into Gary Bracey, the idea of doing an Ocean book came about. So I said to Rog, I said, do you fancy doing this? And he goes, yep, no hesitation, yep.
Wow.
That's how that started. And then we had these long journeys up to Altrincham to see John Woods, David Ward. And that's those car journeys, that's when you get to know somebody. You're in the car for hours. And,
yeah.
And this is our friendship, and talking about our lives, and we were just so compatible as friends,
Mm.
Yeah, and that's how that started. So I'm rambling all over the place.
No, it's fine, because it's really, it's like what you said. It's really surreal when you get to meet these people. It's like people I've met, like yourself, and people I met at RCM in Leicester and the events, and these were just names in magazines. And now you get to meet them as you've got older. It's like, this is really weird. So I totally get that. I remember, I don't know if it was Retro Revival. I think it was Retro Revival 2013, and it was at the Dunstall racecourse in Wolverhampton. Because I was completely oblivious to all these events and stuff that were going on, even though I've never done anything any different with collecting and playing games on different systems. And the only thing I was doing different, I started to go to events, and I always remember going to that one, and I'm pretty sure it was that event. I took my son with me, and he'd have only been about 4, 5, and I think your wife called us over to I think you had a little stall there, and I always remember it, and she handed him this pen, and it was an Amiga pen, and I was like, oh, can I have one? And she was like, no, that's for your son, that's it. And and my son was just like, oh, just a pen to him, but I was like, that's got an Amiga on it.
See, the revival events came about. I think when I was younger, I was always trying to. I had my career, which was in computers. I was a programmer, team leader, project. That was my career, but it was never quite enough. Yeah. When I started my family, and my wife used to say to me, "Why isn't your family enough?" And I was like, dabbling with magazines, and then events, and then I started making arcade machines.
Okay.
There's a website called Arcade Controls, which still exists, and you'd have all these people in a forum building their own arcade cabinets, and I learned all about it. I found Ultimark and Andy from Ultimark and various people, and I built my first cocktail cab, and it was
Right.
okay. bit of an investment, yeah, because you're
Hmm.
paying for the glass and the graphic and there's a little interface and all the controls. So I started building them and selling them. And then when you do that kind of thing, you become aware of other people, and there wasn't that many at the time doing a similar thing, and that's what Craig was doing at Turner Arcades
Yeah.
at the time. He was
Yeah.
building his own arcade machines, which were uprights, and that's when we started to know of each other.
Hmm.
That must be back 2009, 10, thereabouts, around that time.
Okay.
So when we did the Ocean Kickstarter, this me being the noob that I was back then, I said if we hit 15 grand, we will do a big gaming event.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, 15 grand probably didn't cover it. Covered the printing maybe and the distribute, the sending out 400 copies. And that's how it happened. That's how Revival started. I went to Blackpool,
Hmm.
so Craig was up there. Um, I think he'd done some kind of cab he was showing off or something.
Yeah.
And we started talking, about doing an event. Right, okay. And then we started looking at venues, and he picked all the venues up his way, which is up Warsaw, up that way, where he lives.
Yeah.
We looked at venues down here in Warwickshire, and they were just stupid price.
Hmm. Hmm.
I remember going. I remember said he found one, and it was part of a church. And it was brilliant, yeah. But it meant we could only do it on a Friday and a Saturday
Hmm.
because they were using it for church services
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah. That would have been
Yeah,
fun.
and because it was a religious location, there was no alcohol. I'm thinking this is not going to work.
No. No.
Yeah, this is not the vision. And then we went to Dunstall for the first one, and I remember walking in, and I'm thinking, oh my god, because I knew how much effort it was just doing a small event, carting these heavy caps and kit just to do the fusion event and
Hmm.
and this place was huge, as you said, you went there. So the first one we went and we did a makeshift Q&A area in one of the one of the rooms with drums and God knows what. But you would walk through, and we had this vision of walking through the main, like an oblong room. It would go into a middle bit, which would open out, and then it would go into a massive room then with all these drop down projectors and screens and we put about, I don't know, 80 arcade machines in there, pinball tables, and God knows what. And had about, I don't know, 3,500 people visit over 2 days. And then you do that event, and me and Craig thought, Jesus, that was good, and you get such a high and a buzz out of it. And then we did the follow up one the year after because we had to think, well, how the hell do you top what we did last year? You have to get a special guest or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I was sitting where I'm sitting now, and I'm thinking, John Romero, what's the chances of getting him?
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, I sent John a message because he's on my friends list because I think he just accepts requests. But I
Okay.
also, I also had Brenda, his wife, and then I messaged her a few days later. What are the chances of? And she replied, and she goes, "You never guess what." Yeah, because I gave her the dates. They were living in America at the time, and they were coming over on a cruise ship, Queen Elizabeth or Queen Mary or wherever the ship was, and they were going to renew their vows in Ireland, I think, or somewhere, and they were landing in Southampton 2 days before our event, and then they were going to travel up from Southampton and then cross over to, I'm sure it was Ireland, to via the ferry,
Well, that would
and they
make
could,
sense because I think that's
yeah,
where they live now, isn't it?
they
Yeah.
live in Galway now, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then they were gonna call into our event on the way.
Hmm.
And we had John Romero at
I know.
Revival 2014, and no
Yes.
one, no one believed us.
Hmm.
I mean, I didn't believe it until
I didn't believe it until I walked through the door and saw him. And I was like,
I was getting messages on a Friday night, yeah, because I was in a Luton van trying to get arcade machines from my stuff, and then I was getting messages, oh my God, John Romero's in here,
yeah,
and then that was just mental.
rock star of gaming.
I know, and he's just won an award now, isn't he, with GDC Life Achievement Award?
Yeah,
So
well
um,
deserved. Well deserved.
yeah, so the events was always something. After the second one, we did a mini one in Kenilworth where we did the launch of the Ocean book.
Yeah.
I did three, and then I said to Craig, I can't. I was thinking I was broken after the second one. I'd done my knee in,
Oh, okay.
and then you have all these camps to take around, and you just completely and utterly broken.
They're not light, are they?
And then and you know it was something me and Craig done. Um, it was like a trophy thing, you know. Can we do it? Because
Mm.
there was no financial reward for doing it. Because all the money went back into the event, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it didn't go back into the event. It went into the credit card to pay off the money you had paid to put on the event. That's what was happening. I think there was like 15 grand on my credit card at one point, and
Wow.
yeah, and it was just a risk, you know. So I said, look, I wanted to see where the book thing was going, and we started. It's been 4 years now. So you know, we did the magazine. You know, Craig, so I kept on doing the events, and I kept on supporting where I could.
Yeah, yeah, I
Uh,
remember, yeah. Mm.
the latter revival events, I took a bit more. I did pull away quite a lot between, I don't know, 15 and 18, 19, maybe 3 or 4 years.
Mm.
And then he asked me if I would help him a little bit, and I said, yeah, I'd love to. And with the Q&A, I brought John Romero back, which I can't remember what year that was now, 2018, and Craig tells me. And then 2019, we did Bullfrog and Sensible Software, and I think that's the last bigger event we did in Dunstall in the football ground Bescot.
Yeah.
So I was getting back into that, and I was really enjoying it. It was just nice to see everybody again and be a part of that buzz of doing it. It was Craig's event. Revival is
Yeah.
Craig's.
I remember seeing you at the last the last event in Warsaw. It wasn't at the football ground. It was in this like little community centre because
Oh yeah,
you were on the corner as
yeah,
you
yeah,
went through
yeah.
the opening.
We
Um,
had Michael Parkinson there, the guy who does the Beano
yeah,
drawings. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and that was just before the pandemic, wasn't it? That was the last one.
yeah, was that February, March 2020? I want to say 20. I think
Well,
so. Yeah.
yeah, and then within a couple of weeks, it had started, hadn't it? Full on.
two 2 years of nothing really. But
Yeah,
during
yeah.
those 2 years, so during those 2 years of nothing, I walked away from my day job
Okay.
and started doing this full time.
Right.
It'd be 3 years. 3 years now. This coming July, I've been doing this full time, and that's when we accelerated with um, the Crash magazine, the Zap magazine, Zap Amiga,
Yeah.
and Fusion is still going strong, and you know that was the catalyst. You know, how can I make this work if I'm going to walk away from my career? You know, to make
Mm.
this, and we bought a dog at the same time. So
As you do.
lockdown, yeah, lockdown. We bought a dog, and not just a lap dog. We bought a border collie who needs lots of walking,
Mm.
lots of stimulus, and then
Clever dogs, there.
yeah, the good dogs. He's a
Mm.
good dog. And then I give this I give this a crack. I said to my wife, "It's now or never. You got your good job." And then I walked away from a good job. They wanted me to stay. I was on a year kind of fixed term contract and senior position. And then 2 weeks after I did that, my wife was made redundant.
Oh,
Uh, and then that was the start of I said, this is fine. This is still fine. And then she's got an awesome job now. So I always say, if you're made redundant, there's always, I've been made redundant 3 times. You always step onto
yeah,
something bigger, or it gives you an opportunity at least to reassess and look at something else. You know.
yeah. I have myself. Yeah, yeah. It's
So
just one of the things.
this is what I'm doing now, and I'm here thinking, well, Crash is doing really well, Zap's doing really well, and I'm palming that off to other people to look after now. And I saw Dave Clark doing his Spectrum music. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if that was Crash Radio, and that's created it up? And it's just sitting here thinking, what can I do next? What can we do next?
Mm.
That's been me all over really for most of my life. I'm never happy unless there's about 60 million plates spinning, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've certainly got a hell of a lot of projects on the go, haven't you?
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
I mean, you started up like the crash event.
Yeah.
How did you feel that went?
So I guess we do the Patreon for subscribers on Crash, so we knew we had an audience.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, Craig, as you know, has been through a tough couple of years.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah. Mm.
I'll say it wasn't even a cancer scare. He got cancer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and we bumped into each other. We bumped into each other at Arcade Club, which I absolutely adore. Arcade Club in Bury.
Was that the
Last
extra life one? I think I was at
Yeah,
that one. Yeah, I was at that one. Yeah.
first time I seen Craig for a while, right? We'd seen each other months and months and months and months before, where he thought that he had something going on,
Mm.
and this was months and months and months later when he'd had the operation and he was recovering.
That's right. Yeah.
We had an awesome chat. Craig and I are tight. Yeah, we get on really, really well. A
Mm.
really good conversation. And this is where the idea spawned for him to do a book, something to focus on. And he's doing a book. It was meant to be called, I don't know, we haven't finalized a title, but it's nearly done. It's meant to be gaming systems to die for, or to play before you die, or whatever. Yeah, because he was recovering, and he was
Mm.
like collecting all these amazing machines. And we thought, wouldn't it be a good to do a book on some of these amazing machines I've never heard of, Craig? You know, I want to read this book to see how to, this Brazilian machine that you've imported that I've never heard of it.
No. No.
So it was that, and then we went to Spectrum 40 back in May last year.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
Desktop,
Yeah. I went to
and
that.
then
Yeah.
I was a store there, and I just loved the fact that so many people came to say hi.
Mm.
People, because we've had lockdown and all these things, and I've been out of it for a long time. And then Craig came to my stall. All right, hello, mate. And we had a picture taken and stuff. And I said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" And he goes, "Yep." And then we need, we felt we could do a Spectrum event, and that's what we did. That was it was basically going to be Crash. I'll call it Crash Live. I'm not even sure where that came from. Crash Live.
Yeah.
And then it would be in association or in collaboration with Revival Retro Events and RCM. And the planning of the event, it accelerated very quickly. It had to, really, because we just announced doing 6 annuals, didn't we, for the Kickstarter, and then all of them arrived. Because they were meant to all arrive like a month, 5, 6 weeks before the event, and they arrived a week before. Yeah, and there were 6,000 books arriving, and I wanted to sell these annuals at the event, so as a matter of we sent out, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 books in a week, something. So we were able to sell them at the event and not have backers getting upset that we'd sold them at the event first. That was the idea.
Mm.
But the event came together very, very quickly. The guests, Malcolm Evans, Clive said yes very quickly. The next guys all came. There was a bit of a hoo-ha then with the venue where Warsaw had won some game. I'm not into football, man. I'm
No,
Welsh.
I'm
Into,
not. You're into rugby, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah. I'm not into either of them.
so
I'm into martial arts. That's it.
there was a risk the event was going to be cancelled 2 weeks before the event.
Yeah.
Because Walsall had won a football. I couldn't get my head around it.
No.
So where we held the event was the same room as Spectrum 40 was at, which was not the plan. It was meant to be the other suites, which were lower down.
Oh,
So
okay.
Craig and I had to replan the event. So if you can imagine planning an event for 5 months, and this is the floor plan, this is the footprint, this is the space we've got, and then they just took that away from us, and then in 2 weeks we had to replan using a new space, and that's what we had to do. Really, we only had one room with the 2 bits at the end. That's why we had to make a Q&A area. So we hired soundproofing, stage equipment to do that.
Yeah.
And we had to improvise a little bit, but the event came, and on the Friday we spent all day trying to get 35-year-old TVs talking or 35-year-old speckies talking to 35-year-old TVs. That was a bit worrying. You couldn't tune any of them in. So Wayne was actually composite modding them on the fly.
Yes, I remember him saying, yeah.
Oh man, that was stressful. So things have changed for these other events, which you'll see. I've got 35 brand new LCD monitors over there.
Oh, okay.
We've tested and made sure they're working with Commodores and Speckies. And then on the Saturday, I remember somebody coming up to me saying the car park's already full and there's a queue going all the way out of the building, down the stairs, and as far as you could see. I'm thinking, I got to see this. I swear, I welled up. I couldn't believe.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it, and I did a little video of it, and I'm saying thanks, guys, because it was just meandering all the way through the car park and into the distance. And then we try to get everybody in as quickly as we can. Craig said to use this ticket tailor system. So we like blibbling, 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 and everything just worked. That's get in you go, mate, in you go, in you go. Get your goodie bag.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, with all the helpers and with all the people volunteering and the traders, the place looked busy before we had the extra 500-600, the 550 people in. And when they were in, it's like buzzing. It's brilliant, mate. Just I was in my element. This is 600 people in a room, all Sinclair people. For the event. Or when I say Sinclair people, I mean focused on one system, just like ZZap will be on the,
yeah,
because it's a targeted audience. All the traders targeted all their stuff for these people. The Q&As were all targeted for Sinclair fans, and there was just a huge buzz.
It was fantastic. I mean, it was a shame that the Spectrum 40 event. I mean, I still enjoyed it, but it was nothing what I expected. I was expecting how Crash was. It was Spectrum 40, It was a shame. It really was. But
we lost Ollie a few months before, and Roger was, he was. This is end of November, and Roger passed, only a number of weeks later. So, we had Anthony and Nicola do a preview of their new film, but they also some clippings of Ollie that had not been seen, and only a couple of weeks before that, I went over to see Roger Ludlow and showed him that video. It was soon after Ollie died, and he'd never seen that footage of him. It was basically the footage they never used. The stuff that landed on in the old days, the
cutting room floor.
Yeah. So you just saw this video of Ollie being like a cheeky chappy he was,
Yeah.
And it was really emotional just seeing Ollie and Rog and also Franco had a stroke at that point as well, and he's recovering still. And I said when I went to see Rog after the event, and I said, Rog, I said, you were all there, I know you weren't physically there, but we were all watching you on the screen, and you were all with us. So, yeah, doing the Crash event got me back into it. Obviously, then if you do a Crash event, you got to do a ZZap event, because that way, got to keep both parties happy, and then that's why we're doing the ZZap event now. Changed the venue. Bescott. I couldn't put myself through that again, where there was a risk of a football match when doing months and months of planning.
Too much stress.
Yeah. No way. So we unbelievably, I don't know why I thought this. The Holiday Inn hotel in Kenilworth, where I live, was called Montford Hotel many years ago, and before Holiday Inn bought it. And it's where my wife and I got married 25 years ago this year.
Oh wow! Okay.
So the Q&A room now for future events is where we exchanged our vows.
Oh, that's going to bring back some memories then. Wow.
The main hall is where I had all of her family and my family on both sides. And then I didn't realize there's a second room there, which is not as big as the main one, but it's quite big. So we've got 3 rooms effectively, and it's absolutely perfect. I can't wait for the ZZap event. and then subsequently the Crash event in November.
Mm. Yeah,
'Cause
looking forward to it.
the venue is there's go through reception. You've got the I say smaller room, the second largest room to the left. Then you're going down a corridor, and you've got like a breakout lounge with TV and a bar. And on your right hand side, you've got a breakfast bar, food and coffee, Starbucks, all that stuff. And we're putting cabs and pinballs and down in going into the main room. And then you got lifts on the left which take you to your rooms if you booked a room. So everything is
Self-contained, yeah, yeah.
walk through these double doors then, and you've got this big room where everything, mainly all the 64 stuff will be. And in the other room then we're going to have Swag, Southwest Amiga Group, who are helping us with all the Amiga stuff. So you're going to have every Commodore system represented somewhere in this event.
Mm.
The likes of Rob Hubbard come in, and
I know, I can't believe that. What a superstar.
Andrew Braybrooke is coming. Did Iridium and Paradroid. Steve Turner. I mean, because it's Amiga. I mean, Steve did a lot of the work on Andrew's games, and Andrew did a lot of work on Steve's games, even though they were Spectrum and Commodore.
Mm.
But because it's Graph Gold and there's Amiga is there as well, then it spans onto Fire and Ice and Rainbow Islands. They did the conversion on the Amiga. And then we got signed. It's been 10 years since the Ocean book, which is unbelievable. And so I asked Gary Bracey if he'd like to come, and Simon Butler and Stephen Thompson. And I'm going to ask Colin Port as well. I've sent him a message if he'd like to come and have a small Q&A for the Ocean guys. John Hayes agreed to come. Steve Cambridge is going to come. Jason Page is going to come. We got live music in the evening from the Mad Fiddler, TDK,
yeah.
Dark Knight. Yeah. And then we got Jonathan Taylor, and we've got Max Hall doing DJing at the end of the night, and we've got Ben's doing show reels at the beginning of the night, and there's potentially a second live waiting for confirmation. Somebody else might be doing a live set as well after Mark. So again, we're trying to do this all day thing, but like we did a Crash, we did the day event, and then we did a gathering with Nicola and Anthony. And you can decide to leave at 6:30, or you could buy tickets then to stay for the evening as well.
Mm.
So the Zap event's already in motion, and then it's a matter of thinking about Crash.
Yeah.
Already the March, mate. It's incredible.
Yeah, looking forward to both events. Really are. Yeah.
And then the idea there next March, a year time, we'll do a Fusion event, a Fusion Live. And that's, if you think about what we tried to do at Crash, where we'd had a Fusion area with everything else, and so talking to Craig as well about this, about having,
all multiple systems. Yeah.
So I think the revival would be the big arcade machines and the pinballs and that kind of stuff that the revival's known for, and we'll make Fusion a little bit more about the systems and a couple of cabs, but nothing trying to differentiate what I'm trying to do to what revival is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff. There's still a lot of other stuff going on as well, but there's a lot of stuff being planned. And
are there any? Is there anything for the future that you can give us some sneak peeks of, or any sneak peek information?
Well, we're doing a Kickstarter right now for a book called ZX Nightmares by Graham Mason.
Yeah.
So this book has been a long time in coming. The book's been ready for a lot, at least the writing part of it.
Mm.
We've just had that formatted by Steve Day, and the Kickstarter's running. So that should be able to go to print, because the Kickstarter's already hit its target. We're hoping to send that to print end of the week. Craig's doing a book, as I said, which might be called Game Not Over, because it's definitely not game over in Craig's world.
No.
We're going to Game Not Over, and he's going to be talking about all the systems, like the Mega PC and the Panasonic Q, and what else has he got in there? Those systems that I've never heard of. I can't even remember the names of one.
Super rare ones. Yeah,
obscure systems, and then some history about the console or the computer, what to do with it in this current day and age, rarity and all that kind of stuff. You know, if you can put an expansion pack in, or you could put I didn't even know with a Mega PC you can put all these different things inside to bring it up to date. So that's well underway being formatted. We're working on a Spectrum Mastertronic book
Mm-hmm.
to go with the Commodore one. We're working on a graphical book. Graham Mason's writing history part of that now. Now his book's out of the way. We've already interviewed Andrew and Steve and various other people. We're going to do a reprint of Jerry Ellis's books, which is I can never remember the words, the game of the film of the whatever, but there's going to be a project coming up to reprint that. And there's a couple of other things going on. We're talking to a guy called James Duncan about doing a book on the games all the way through from Specky 8-bit that had, you know, when you buy a game and you get it in a box and you get a poster and you get a little toy figure or this and that, the games that give you more kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, the instruction manual, the lot. Yeah,
like the Ultima games, you know, you get big maps and God knows what. James Duncan, we used to work at, he did all the graphics on Die Hard Trilogy on the PS1.
Oh, okay.
He worked at Lionhead Studios working on Fable. So he's a name, not a well-known name, but he's a part of the team that did some amazing games. So that's something we're working on at the moment. Or he's working on to do a preview. And we've got the annuals in at the end of the year. And then obviously the monthly Crash Zap and all the other magazines we're doing.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to wake up on a Monday morning and think, okay, what month is it? What's the priority this week? You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so trying to figure out what the Crash event looks like. You know, already brainstorming the guests and you know, what can we do in the evening, which makes it a bit unique as well.
Okay.
And these things that, you know, there's no answers in some of these things, but sometimes you'll be sitting and you think, or something will present itself, you know, like somebody will say, oh, we got this brand new film or this brand new this, and that would be a good thing to show or do, you know, or we got this brand new chiptune music. Okay, maybe would you do this live, you know?
Yeah.
And some things just present themselves because the scenes are so buzzing, aren't they?
That's it. You just add it to your list.
Yeah. Or you just improvise, you know. I said to Craig, the events I put on with Craig are the ones I would like to go to. You know, if there was an event, I would like to go to that event, the event that we put on, you know.
And that's what it should be. Yeah. That's it.
I'm a fan of the day. I'm a huge fan of retro gaming, I suppose. Of all of it, you know, all the systems, you know.
Yeah. If people want to get hold of you and look at your projects, where do they need to look?
Okay, so there's 3 websites now. Okay. There's fusionretrobooks.com, where you can look at all the books and subscribe to the newsletter, and I offer lots of discounts to people on the newsletter throughout the year. So that covers all the magazines. If you want to look at and purchase back copies of Fusion, Crash, all 2 Zap ones, Amtix, by binders, etc., etc. So that's fusionretrobooks.com. There's still stock of Ocean Book, US Gold, not so many as there used to be, but because, you know, I'm not going to replenish any of the older stock of these books now, because the last thing I want is, you know, there's an audience which is finite. So I've done different, you know, I've reprinted the Ocean Book I think 3 times because there's been demand. So that's Fusion Retro Books. Then we launched a site called fusionretromerchandise.com towards the end of last year, and that's where you can get prints from Ollie, and then there's gaming signed prints on there as well that I've been doing as part of Kickstarters, like mounted prints. Yeah, like you've got a picture of Trashman and then Malcolm's signature underneath. So and then there's mugs. We did very well before Christmas with a Crash mug. Gary Arnott, who is absolutely incredible at what he does in the art, in making art good. He's basically tidied up many covers that we've not had of Crash and Zap. So I asked him if there was any way of him merging two of all his Christmas cover arts together, and that's what he did in the landscape, and we created a Crash mug, and we did the same for the Zap one, and they're on there as well. So that's Fusion Retro merchandise. And then in the last week or so, we just launched fusionretroevents.co.uk, and that's where you can go in, book tickets for Zap Live currently. And then when the time comes, you'll be able to do the same for Crash for November, and then the events next year. And that's where we give information on the hotel, how to get there, travel. There's a couple of galleries on there, which I'm sure there's a picture of you on there.
Probably. Oh, with Wayne, I think. There's probably one on there with me and Wayne. Yeah.
We'll put images on there of galleries of events past, and obviously we've only got one at the moment that is part of this current thing we're doing. So so that'll be a repository of pictures, videos, and information on the events. And then we've got the patrons then, which you can get from fusionretrobooks.com. If people want to subscribe to Crash, Zap, on all the magazines, there's corresponding patrons, which would be brilliant if people do, because it means we have a good idea then of how many magazines to print, and it means there's a foundation. People on Patreon tend to get the PDFs as part of the package and get things earlier than anybody else. So it's the patrons offer subscriptions, and then we've got the 3 sites.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'll put all those links in the description anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure there's an RCM event. It's so easy for me to get to. It's just a matter of having the time, if it fits. Yeah. I love RCM. I'm a big supporter of what Andy's done, and I've always been a big fan. I mean, I met Andy at the Fusion event I did in 2008, and he always said I inspired him to what he's done at RCM. But to me, Andy and what he's done is an inspiration. It really is.
Yeah, it's nice that is. It's nice that is, because there's it's Extra Life too, isn't it? I think is the next gathering at RCM. Yeah.
We were meant to do Zap in May with Scott, and that all went a bit, as I said, a bit weird.
Yeah.
So it meant then jumping ahead over that event into August. So we got the problem a little bit about holidays and such, but it should be fine. As long as we get enough people there,
It'll be nice to just turn up and not worry about, we've got to get taxis later and go somewhere else. And because I used to get to they've stopped it now, but for about 6-7 years I was going to an event called LiveCon in Sedgebrook, and it was all to do with science fiction and the game Elite, which obviously the game Elite, but it was brought on by when they released Elite Dangerous, the modern version of Elite. And as I say, I was going to this event for 6-7 years, all around that game, and that was at a hotel. So you just turn up, you had all your different rooms in the day and all the different events that were on, and then when you'd had enough, you just okay, I'm off to bed now, and that was it. It was brilliant. It was over 2 days, so you had your Sunday as well, and it was absolutely fantastic. And for two of the years, I ran a little mini retro event myself. We just had one room. It was myself and a guy called Stephen Usher, and he brought his BBCs along, and I brought I just brought a line of consoles with me, Mega Drive, SNES. I think I brought an old retro PC with me, an old AMD K63 jobby with a Voodoo Graphics 3 in it. which was running Quake, and it was
Yeah.
great. It was great fun.
I've got the urge to buy a 3DFX PC. I got the urge. I've got a
Yeah.
PC in this room here,
Okay.
which has got GeForce 4MX, I think it's called. So it runs all those games. I like
Right.
the fact when you run the 3DFX games, it will come up with the logo, didn't it, at the beginning?
Oh,
3DFX.
it was great. Well, it was the original Quake, really. That brought that out for me. By my first what was it? Orchid Righteous Voodoo Graphics.
Yeah.
It was the first card, and you could buy two. Um,
Oh yeah,
and run them in SLI. Yeah.
they would do a line each, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
Like,
and that's what was mental with that retro event at Dunstall. I'd already been going there for years to the PC, to the computer fairs, so I was
yeah.
always there anyway. So it was no different for me, but it was just retro instead, rather than buying blank discs and memory in a plastic bag that they used to give you, and crazy.
See, so those events were big for me. They no one can take away from the fact that we did them. There was a lot of worry, a lot of, oh my gods, are we going to do this or pull this off? And we did twice for the Dunstall ones. But God, there were a lot of work. There's a lot of grafting, a lot of really good people who did a lot of work to make that happen. I think the 600, the ones we're doing now, because Craig and I got quite a lot of experience with events.
Yeah.
Craig obviously a lot more with doing one subsequently. Doing one around 600 people, like Crash, or we know what we're doing. We've got a floor plan for ZZap already. We know that where the PowerPoints are. We know what we can do. We know what people like. We know how to make this good. And with this new venue, I was a little bit worried what Craig would think of it, but thumbs up from him. This is up. This is going to work. For what we're doing. Ground floor, easy access to bring stuff into. It's a hotel. There's a bar. There's food.
Everything you need. Yeah.
So we're setting up the stuff on the Friday. We got the second room booked out and to just start putting stuff into, and then we'll be setting up that area, and then from 6 o'clock we'll set the other areas. So the whole event starts at 10 o'clock all the way through to 11 o'clock on the Saturday. So what I thought would be nice, then we haven't really announced this, is that if I left the second room, if I hired the second room for half a day on the Sunday. So I said, there's a big room where we had our wedding reception, and there's a Q&A room down here, and there's another room down here, which is maybe 2/3 the size of the big room, or maybe, yeah. So if we left stuff in there, and then people have breakfast on the Sunday, they could go and play some games in that room till about 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, on the Sunday, before they then gradually left to go home. So we're going to do that as well. I haven't told Craig this yet, so maybe Craig will find out by if you put this in the video.
I'll keep stumbling.
Yeah, so it's a matter of putting a few systems in there. Not a huge amount. Maybe my stuff. Right? I just bought an arcade one-up Star Wars pinball table. Yeah, which I'm bringing to the events. It's a virtual pinball, with an LCD.
Yeah. Okay.
So we could put a few things in there, and then it could be my stuff, which I could then, Craig and whoever else can go on the Saturday night if they want to. But I know Craig is staying over anyway, so we can play. Have a relaxing Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Having a coffee, playing some games before we all disappear. Just to add that little bit more, where you aren't going to go yet. If you're staying over, guys, you can come and play a few games before you go.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a nice end to it. That is, yeah, I like
that. Craig will find out if you decide to include that.
Well, at least we'll know
Craig,
If he
you've
watches
done
it to
what?
the end.
Yeah, Craig's like, you've done what? Yeah. I did that on Friday, thinking, it's sometimes with these events, it's such a good experience and such a good feeling. You don't want them to end, you know.
Mm,
So there's no rush for people to leave on a Sunday morning. You'll have your breakfast, and come and play a few games, and then go when
yeah,
midday, drift off home, early afternoon.
yeah. I like it. I like it. Anyway, mate, I'll let you go.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you, mate.
Yeah, it's been awesome, mate. Really has, really has. I look forward
I've known you a
to.
long time, but we've never spoken like this before.
No, no. Well, I think you were the first. You were the first to approach me at RCM, wasn't you? If I remember right. Well, you what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because what I do, right? I see people, and then just as I'm about to leave, I recognize who they are.
Mm.
I think I said to you, I know you.
Yeah, that was off.
I did the same thing with Paul Bridger at the last RCM, just as I was leaving.
Mm.
So I thought, you're Paul Bridger. You did the documentary on Alistair Brimble. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just I don't know why.
Yeah, that's it. One thing I was going to ask you. Did you manage to message Lakash?
I messaged him and he's given me his email. Um, but I'll send him an email. He was in Poland at the time because he's Polish, yeah.
Yeah.
He was over there with family. We've spoken quite a bit on chat over the years, and I need to present it to him. He's doing a lot of stuff at the moment. He's putting out a lot of singles, and he's putting out these little bits of video that he's mucking around with his Commodore and his Game Boys
Yeah. He's just
and
released an Amiga track, hasn't
oh, he did yesterday.
he? Yeah. Yeah.
I was that it doesn't sound very meagerish to me, but
No, no, it's well.
um,
I've recognised two of the samples in it, so it's definitely from an Amiga.
I think one is Super Frog, isn't it? I read somewhere. But
Ooh.
yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Right. Okay.
So
That's
I'll mess.
that's
I will
Alistair
mess.
Brimble, isn't it? Is that Alistair Brimble?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he was 17.
Mm.
I'll send him an email and just say I'm not going to invite him to come. I'll say, of course, you're invited to come, but he'll say no to that because he's quite reserved and shy and he doesn't
Okay.
want to stop people. I'll just say, but would you? We've got Barry Leach coming onto the screen with the Q as part of the Q&A.
Mm.
So I want to do a show reel of Horizon Chase Turbo, all the music he's done for that, and then go back to some of the Amiga stuff like Gunship he's done. So he'll join Rob and Jason, and I'm hoping Mark. So Matt Gray will come as well. I'm trying to get hold of Matt. But I'm hoping Lukash will do something. We could do it remotely, where he could be in his kitchen like the old days with his mask on,
Yeah.
and then do.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Oh, it'd be amazing. Yeah.
And all you do is say hi, Zap live, yeah.
Yeah.
And somehow prove it's live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't work that bit one out yet. Because if he doesn't respond to, it depends. A, will he do it, and B, would he interact with me on the screen? Because if I ask him a question and he replies to it, then it's live, doesn't it?
Well, this is true.
If I,
This is true.
well, if I just say go for it, it could be somebody behind the scenes just pressing play, couldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So we got to ask him some questions, definitely.
Right, or at least one question.
Mm.
So what time is it up there in Scotland?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, he lives in, is it Edinburgh? Oh,
I can't remember one of the
yeah.
big cities.
Yeah.
But he sounds like a lovely guy. He's very talented.
He really is. I absolutely love his stuff.
I've been following his stuff all the way from his early stuff. I got all his albums on Bandcamp
Mm.
when he was doing.
Yes, because he did this. I remember having this message, and he was almost giving everything away.
Yeah, donation. He said,
Yeah.
and donation it will go to some charity or something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a matter of whether he feels comfortable. I'd say to him, just put the mask on. The mask
Yeah.
how he broke.
Put the mask on. Do a live YouTube stream.
Just say
You can do it
hi,
from your phone. Yeah.
Well, just through Skype when we were projected on the screen.
Yeah,
Just for 5, 6 minutes, just one track, 2 tracks, just to have him a part of this.
yeah. And then when he's finished the second track, oh, just another one, just another one. And then when we've
While
had
you,
about 5 albums.
while you, while we got you,
Yeah,
I'll work on it. Yeah, but there's plenty of time.
because at the
5
end of the
months.
day, he's obviously got a passion there for the Amiga and the Commodore scene.
Yeah,
Or he wouldn't be
he's
doing what he's doing. So,
well. We said we would collaborate, yeah, or do something because he respects what I'm doing and I respect what he's doing. So it's a matter of whether he's willing to do something which puts him live in front of people, but not
it's
even though
difficult.
yeah, even though it's not he's not in the room. He's still in the room, isn't he? You know.
I mean, if you just said to me, 4 years ago before the pandemic, would you do a live podcast? I'd be like, got no chance. So I'm such an introvert. So I think the pandemic sort of changed everybody.
I think we're all introverts, mate. I think
Yeah,
even when you're perceived as being not an introvert,
it's an
which
act. It's almost an act, isn't it? But Chris, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you.
we could talk too much, mate.
I know, but that helps me.
Yeah. You,
So
you could have said, Chris, tell me all about yourself. Right, okay, then. I was born in 1999.
yeah, you make my job easier by
Yeah,
chatting.
Chris,
So it's been
same thing.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah. So
Speak for the
yeah, that's it. So thanks for doing this with me. It's been great.
That's okay, pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'll no doubt I'll speak to you soon, or I'll see you at Zap definitely.